He writes often about the SEC, and his stuff is must-read content. Let's talk first, John Talty, as we say hello to you, about Alabama and Georgia. I'm not sure I was quite seeing what I was believing. Nick Saban was excited. He was praiseworthy of his team. He seemed rather relieved to escape Bryant-Denny Stadium with a win over Tennessee, but Georgia and many others loom ahead. Good afternoon, John.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on again, Paul. And yeah, I think that was one of the things that maybe was the most surprising to me, and I'm sure we'll get into it. There are a lot of surprising things about that game, far closer than I think a lot of us thought. But, if I know you know this, Paul, but generally speaking, if Alabama has a big win, Nick Saban tries to, bring them down a little bit, doesn't want their egos going crazy. They had a tough loss. He tries to build them back up and, make sure that they're not too far down. And the way he talked after that game and about not wanting to be negative and things like that was much more of how he approaches things after a loss than a game that they won by 28 points. So to me, that was very interesting if you know how Saban typically plays things. And I think speaks to, some of the issues that this team continues to face of trying to play consistent and having the confidence to go out and really beat teams that they should.
Talking to John Talty about a number of issues, including Alabama. John, I know it's ridiculous to look too far ahead, but, the LSU game doesn't seem challenging. Arkansas probably not. Maybe Auburn. We don't know enough about Auburn yet. And then Georgia. But Auburn is where I want to land here, and not about the Tigers on the field. They have a huge game against Ole Miss. But yesterday, the story came out concerning Brian Harsin. We heard his comments. And I want to get to Mike Leach in a minute. We'll play his comments first. But can you give us the lay of the land in Alabama specifically on what Harsin was responding to yesterday in relation to a vaccine mandate?
Sure, Paul. So this all really stems from the federal mandate that President Joe Biden has put forth because schools like University of Alabama and Auburn University take a lot of federal tax dollars and things like that, federal funding, grant funding, things like that. They essentially are included in that federal mandate, especially if they want those dollars. And so recently, I think it was last week, Friday or so, it kind of came down to both Alabama and Auburn. We're going to have a vaccine mandate, and anyone who does not take effect into that, does not get the vaccine, is subject to termination unless they get a specific exemption. So it's coming, it came to a head on Monday in which Brian Harsin, who has been very skittish, has not wanted to go into any details about whether he has been vaccinated or not, again declined to go into that specifics when directly asked about how this new mandate at Auburn could impact him. So it's setting up a situation where if Brian Harsin has not been vaccinated, and again, he has not said one way or another whether he has, if he has not been vaccinated by December 8th, he is subject to termination. And so we just saw this situation play out in Washington State. And there's, at least the potential at Auburn, and I know we're going to talk about Mike Leach in a second, and at Mississippi State, that if those two guys are not fully vaccinated by a certain point in this year, they could lose their jobs.
Yeah, and John, I think most coaches, other than those two, have publicly acknowledged it. We know Saban and Kirby Smart and countless others. I think almost, I can't say specifically, but it seems like every other coach has at least acknowledged in some way, shape, or form that they've been vaccinated. Only Leach and Harsin did not. So let me share with the audience the question. We played Harsin a minute ago. This is what happened yesterday in Starkville with Mike Leach.
I don't comment on any the whole COVID vaccine thing bounces all over the place, and a guy can just, that'd be like commenting on each hit in a tennis match, so I don't have any comment.
I guess the same question I just asked, although we got a somewhat different answer there, didn't we, John?
We did. I think that's probably what you heard yesterday is the good and bad of Mike Leach. He's going to give you interesting quotes, but they're not always the best. And I think that, I think that his answer certainly played to a certain aspect of that fan base. Certainly, I have, my mentions have been blown up by people that, some of which who believe that Mike Leach's comments were dead on. I think Paul, that I personally don't believe those comments were dead on, but I think there are people that believe this has become a very political issue, and his answer to that hit on that. But I think it's the issue with both Harsin and Mike Leach, and somebody I talked to earlier today, I thought brought up a very smart point to me that I'm going to share with you and your listeners. Most coaches, and these guys are two that fall into this category, hate outside distractions. They just want to talk about the game. They don't want to pay attention to anything else that's not directly applicable to the game. And Auburn in particular has a huge game this weekend against Ole Miss. And the two answers that those guys gave yesterday are going to absolutely create distractions for their games ahead. And so that's something that these guys love to preach, don't create distractions. And Brian Harsin's answer in particular is going to create distractions, because the reason, I'm on your show talking about this thing. This story is not going away. It is going to overshadow what is a very good and exciting game this weekend against Ole Miss. And that's, I think, is in part why his answer, both of their answers really were so lacking, because all it does is create problems for you in the media and keeping guys on message and on plan because of distractions this topic is going to create.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.